The gargoyle of Greenfield Lake, on the fringe of a town swallowed by fog and old rumors, stood Greenfield Lake, a placid mirror that held its breath after dusk. Locals claimed the water could swallow a boat in a heartbeat and spit it back in pieces, as though the lake itself had decided what pieces of the living world deserved to remain. They spoke softly of its night-silent surface, of ripples that rolled in the wrong direction, and of a sculpted watcher, an ancient gargoyle whose stone eyes burned with a cold, greenish light. There were two truths about Greenfield Lake that no one argued over. First, the lake was older than the town, older than the memory of the oldest fisherman, older than the trees that crowded its shore with their tangled fingers. Second, there existed a gargoyle, perched high on the crumbling parapet of a vanished chapel that jutted out over the lake like a broken tooth. The gargoyle had learned to breathe with the slow patience of stone until you forgot it was alive. And then it blinked. I moved to Greenfield when the lake wore the first frost of late autumn like a pale veil. My apartment overlooked the water, and every night I heard the clock in the old church beside the lake strike 13. The bell tolled and tolled, not the usual cadence of 12. It sounded like a warning whispered from the depths. The locals warned me to leave the lake be at night, to let the gargoyle keep its vigil, and I, a stubborn scribe with a curiosity that could gnaw through brick, stayed. The chapel above the lake had been a ruin since long before I arrived, its stones slick with rain and moss, its stained glass windows dull and wetted by wind. A gargoyle guarded the roofline, a figure carved with the skill of a master who had grown tired of life and decided to spend eternity turning a single, cruel gaze onto the world. It was perched not just as ornament, but as sentinel watching, waiting, listening with a stillness so complete you could plausibly believe it harvested your secrets in the same breath you breathed. One night, when the fog rolled in like a tide from the loamy earth, I followed the whispering rumor that the gargoyle lived not merely as a statue, but as a guardian to something far older and far hungrier. The rumor had two flavors: fear and hunger. The fear was practical. The old town's water supply, the pipes that ran beneath the church, sometimes carried a metallic tang, a sign that something solvent and ancient stirred beneath the surface. The hunger was personal. People who listened too long to the lake's whispers, those who stayed too late by the water's edge, began to forget their own names. They woke with the sensation of someone else's hands in their hair, of a mouth that did not belong to theirs speaking in dreams. I ventured out to the chapel that night, lantern tucked under my chin, breath fogging like a pale ghost. The air smelled of damp stone. And something else, a scent I could not name. Old coins and rain and something that glowed faintly green at the edge of vision. The gargoyle watched from its throne of broken shingles, eyes carved to catch and hold your fear, to study the shape of your soul in the candlelight. I pressed closer to the church's jagged door and found a hush beyond the threshold, a silence so complete you could hear your own pulse. In the nave, the pews leaned like tired creatures listening for a lullaby. The lake's surface bled through the broken windows, a sheet of mist against the stone. The gargoyle's shadow stretched across the floor like a dark, living thing. It was not moving, yet somehow the space around it felt as if it were drawing taut, ready to snap. Then I saw it, the thing the town believed to lie beneath the lake's mirror. A figure, pale as a moonlit pearl, floating not through water, but across air, as if gravity had forgotten to pull it down. It hovered between the pews, a woman's shape with hair that streamed like kelp under the surface of a tide. Her eyes were the color of thawed ice, and in them shone a green light that seemed to lick at the edges of reality. She spoke without moving her lips, a voice that sounded as if a violin string had been plucked in the throat of the lake itself. "You seek the truth of Greenfield," she whispered. "The truth is not a story you tell to keep yourself warm at night. It is a hunger and a pact." I swallowed, the sound swallowed by the vast, uninhabited room. "What pact?" I asked, though I knew I should not. The gargoyle shifted then, a tremor through stone that reached even to the rafters. Its eyes, once calm as a winter lake, burned with emerald fire. The room seemed to tilt toward the figure. The presence of the guardian became almost tangible, a density of memory and old guilt that pressed against my skin as if I wore a jacket sewn from the past of strangers. "The pact is simple." The gargoyle's whisper did not feel carried by sound, but by the air itself. "The lake keeps the town alive, the town keeps the lake safe, and the one who fails to honor that balance becomes part of the lake's story, forever listening, forever remembering." The eye of the guardian flickered. "You who writes, you will tell no one what you have seen tonight, for to speak is to break the bargain." I felt the weight of it, the responsibility that lands on a person only once in a lifetime and then sits, heavy as a chain, on your chest. The face in the room, the pale woman, moved closer, not with feet but with the soft suggestion of water sliding over stone. She smiled, a poor mockery of courtesy, and in that smile I saw townspeople who disappeared from their kitchens at dusk and woke in the night to find their own handwriting on the walls, as if the lake had learned to steal ink from their souls. "The lake feeds on memory," she crooned. "Every memory you keep from us, we feed on. Every memory you forget, we cast aside like pebbles and let the current carry away. You came to understand, and with understanding comes the old debt." Her voice lowered to a whisper that trembled in the rafters. "Remember what you remember after tonight, and remember what you forget." The gargoyle's mouth, chiseled in perpetual grimace, opened ever so slightly, revealing a mouthful of stone teeth that rattled with a sound like coins dropping into a well, a sound that was not noise, but a tally of souls who had passed through this threshold and never left their own stories intact. I turned toward the door, ready to retreat, to seal away what I had learned, to sever the link between the lake and the living world. But the door would not open. The chapel's mouth seemed to swallow the air, sealing me inside with the living memory of Greenfield's pact. The gargoyle's gaze fixed on me with a calm, ancient patience. It was as if the stone itself was leaning closer, listening to the internal weather of my thoughts, listening for any crack in my resolve. The green glow returned, not only in the guardian's eyes, but in the wall behind the altar, where the stains formed a map of the lake's currents, a route that any lost memory would travel when it sought a surface to cling to. The woman's figure touched the map and dissolved into a whisper of cold mist. The lake's surface outside glowed like a blade of jade, and the surface began to tremble with the slow approach of something enormous and unseen. The gargoyle spoke without words, a pressure on the air that pressed me toward the edge of obedience. I had no choice but to listen, not to speak a single word, not to betray the pact by naming any part of it aloud. The green light in its eyes intensified, and the room grew as heavy as a pause before a storm. Then, in a voice that was not a voice, but a memory of storms, it told me what to do: to go to the lake at the hour when the bell tolls 13, to stand where the water met the stone, to listen, and to remember only what the lake allows you to remember. I left the chapel with a new fear and a new respect for the world I had entered. The clock in the old church had begun to tick again, counting in a strange rhythm that did not match any clock I knew. The bell did not chime 13, but merely tolled a single tired note, as if the town itself exhaled after a long waking nightmare. From that night onward, I did not write about Greenfield Lake in the same way. I wrote with care, with a tremor in my fingers that refused to be explained to friends who did not know about the pact. I wrote of the gargoyle in a manner that suggested a weathered guardian rather than a monster, because monsters forget their names when the memory of their victims fades. Guardians forget nothing, only the names of those they protect. And perhaps that is the gravest horror of all, that a guardian so ancient, so patient, can be both protector and jailer, depending on the light in which you behold it. People still vanish around Greenfield Lake, not into the blackness of nothingness, but into the more insidious form of becoming part of the lake's memory. A child who learns to swim too young, a man who loses a bet, a widow who listens too closely to the water's whisper. Most days, you cannot tell who has simply stepped away from the world and who has chosen to step into it, to stand by the edge of that jade mirror and let the lake's hunger take what it wants. If you walk near Greenfield Lake at night, and if you listen very carefully, you can hear for a moment a sound like coins dropping into an unlit well. And if you look toward the chapel, you might glimpse the gargoyle, perched eternally on the roof, green flame in its eyes, eyelids carved in such a way that you could swear it smiles whenever the wind shifts. It does not blink, it observes, and it remembers. So beware the toll that the lake demands when 13 bells whisper through the fog. For Greenfield Lake holds its breath until it believes you have learned to breathe with it. And the gargoyle, the ancient guardian of a pact older than the town itself, remains awake, watching, waiting for the day when the lake will choose another memory to swallow and another name to forget. Until that day, we who remain hear the lake's quiet, green fever, and we listen, and we remember what must be remembered, and forget what must be forgotten, and in doing so keep the balance that keeps Greenfield alive and keeps the gargoyle awake.